Often when I'm teaching, I really try to encourage people to ask questions. And when I say you can ask any question you like, I can see that some people are just a little bit nervous. But I remind them that when you ask a question, you might think that you're just asking for yourself, but generally that question you ask is the one that everyone wanted to ask. And they're just grateful because you've asked for them all. And I'm really grateful to the disciples around Jesus because they had such a close relationship with Jesus in the end. They didn't mind asking questions. Even though he was the great teacher, they'd want a further explanation. And I really love that. And I'm so grateful that they asked the questions on behalf of us all. And there's a really good question, a really tough question, actually. Jesus has been talking about how hard it is for a rich person to get into the kingdom of heaven, and said that, it's like a camel trying to go through the eye of a needle, which is the little gate inside the big gates. You'd have to take all the load off to get through. And Jesus is making a really clear point that it's not the wealth that we carry, it's the humility in our hearts that gets us into the kingdom. But the disciples didn't really get this straight away. So they asked this question. And we've got it recorded in Matthew 19, and it says this in verse 25. When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished and asked, "Who then can be saved?" Just like impossible. And Jesus looked at them and said, "With man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible." You see, we can't save ourselves. It would be like trying to get through an eye of a needle. And even in our humility, it's not down to us. Who strips us of our pride? Who gets us to that point when we can receive? Who helps us through that little restricted opening, that narrow gate that leads to life? It's the Lord himself. So what is impossible to us is possible to God. He can save the most unlikely people, and he does. And that includes me. And his love reaches out because he wants to save you. He wants you to know that salvation, because what's impossible to us is perfectly possible to God. So just rest in the greatness of God's accomplishments. And don't worry about your limitations, because he goes way beyond our limitations.